Thank you all for joining us today for this edition of the Lunchtime Chat, sponsored by NAMI Pasco and NAMI Hillsborough. Today we have a wonderful guest that we're excited to have with us. Her name is Behanna, and I'm going to allow her to tell you who she is and why we're seeing a sash. So Faith, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. And tell us about you. Tell us why you've got that sash. Who are you to all of Florida?
Okay, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to do this interview and get to chat with both of you. This February, I was crowned as the reigning USA National Miss Florida. USA National Miss is a really, really incredible youth pageant system. We welcome girls ages 4 to 25 years old, and we really focus on empowering young women, teaching them leadership skills, life skills. We focus a lot on the interview portion of the competition, and we are really proud to be a service-based competition. So we pride ourselves in having delegates who serve their communities and give back to other people's. This Saturday, we actually participated in UNM's National Day of Service. Of course, since we are in the times that we're living in right now and we can't leave the house, we had to do our community service a little bit different this year, and we participated in a nationwide storytelling on our Instagram stories. So we all shared stories about kindness. I personally chose one that talks about mental health and feelings in a way that children can understand. So, you know, UNM is a system that's really important to me, and I really believe in all of the messages that we promote, and I'm honored to be a title holder with the system, and I'm really excited to chat with both of you today about what the system means to me and pageantry while living with anxiety.
Wonderful.
Awesome. We're so happy that you're here today. Can you tell us how long you've been competing in pageants?
So I started competing in pageants when I was 9 years old. I turned 21 this year, so I've been competing for about 12 years, and it's been a really, really incredible journey. I can't thank pageantry and all of the amazing people I've met through it enough for all of the life lessons and the impact that they've made on me throughout the year.
You mentioned anxiety and that your storytelling was focused around anxiety. So mental health has impacted your life. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you have dealt with and lived with anxiety?
So I actually was diagnosed with anxiety when I was really, really young, probably about second grade. I started experiencing panic attacks in the morning when I was going to school. And that's something that I dealt with for a really long time, probably through middle school and high school. And mental health and my anxiety in particular had a huge impact on my education. When I was in high school, I actually reached a point where I decided that the traditional school environment was no longer beneficial to me. And we decided to switch me over to Florida Virtual School. And that really helped me to cope with my anxiety. It was a better learning environment for me because for me, social situations and especially the classroom environment, it was very scary for me. It was very anxiety inducing. So the moment that I switched over to virtual classes, I was able to have a lot more motivation, was able to cope a lot better, and to get along with my studies a lot better. I think anxiety was something that really impacted every area of my life. It's been very far-reaching, but as I've grown up and I've learned to cope with my anxiety a little bit better, it's no longer something that debilitates me like it did when I was in elementary school, middle school. It's now something that I use to overcome other things in my life. And I've taken the lessons that I've learned from overcoming anxiety and started to bring that and the perseverance that I've gained through dealing with anxiety into other aspects of my life.
Awesome. And besides the panic attacks that you mentioned, what are some of the other symptoms that you've had with the anxiety?
One of the things that I notice when I'm feeling really anxious is that I get very, very irritable. I'm just a little bit moodier, a little bit crankier. Little things that normally wouldn't bother me, they really get under my skin. And another thing that I deal with a lot is just overthinking things, getting kind of stuck in my own head. I would be in class and I would kind of feel like I couldn't focus on anything around me because I was so inside of my head and focusing on every scenario, everything that could go wrong. And I felt that way a lot when I was in different social situations, when I was hanging out with friends. It was something that was really difficult for me to deal with for a really long time. And like I said, it impacted every area of my life. It impacted my education. It impacted my ability to make friends. And the feelings and the physical symptoms that I would experience when dealing with anxiety, like a rapid heartbeat and really rapid breathing. It was all really scary to experience, and it was something that I had to learn to cope with, and I had to learn to slow that physical response my body was having to the anxiety in order to learn how to cope with it.
Now, Faith, typically anxiety and pageantry aren't two words that we hear in the same sentence, and there's so much scrutiny with being in a pageant. How are you able to compete and to compete as long as you have while dealing with anxiety?
Yeah, that's actually a question that I get all the time, and people have asked me since I started competing at 9 years old. I think for a lot of people, typical anxiety-inducing situations would be being up on stage in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people, public speaking, being interviewed by a panel. But for me, that was always just where I felt comfortable. It was an environment that I thrived in. Being on stage was like home to me. And I think part of it was because I could control that situation that I was in. I could prepare for it. And I knew that I was mentally ready to go up on stage. I was mentally prepared to go talk to a panel of judges and express to them my ideas and why I thought I was the right title holder for that system. To me, I was able to have a lot of control over that situation, and I knew exactly what I was walking into. And that's not always the case with everyday life or social situations. And that was the scary thing when I was experiencing anxiety. You never really knew how a situation was going to go, and I felt like I didn't have a lot of control over it. So it was that's where the anxiety comes in for me in everyday situations. But in pageantry, I don't have that.
Now, when you are feeling symptomatic, what are some of the things or the people who help you get through that?
Yeah, I was really lucky that when I was diagnosed with anxiety, my mom was someone who understood. Even though she hadn't experienced anxiety herself, mental illness is something that actually runs in my family. So when I was diagnosed, my mom immediately started taking me to therapy. She made sure that if I needed medication, I was on medication. And whenever I would experience panic attacks, she was the person who was always there for me to calm me down, to get my breathing back to a normal level. And she was there for me after it too, because I think a lot of the times, especially as a child dealing with a panic attack, you don't really understand what's going on. That was what was so scary for me. There was something happening to me and I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know how to cope with it, but having my mom there to guide me through it was always really, really helpful. And now that I'm older and I do know some different coping techniques, if I'm out by myself, and I'm in a situation where I'm experiencing anxiety, if I can just get myself to kind of a quieter, more peaceful area, and I can calm down my breathing, I can get out of my own head a little bit, that's really beneficial to me too as well.
I mean, just everything you're saying, I can relate to. You mentioned the breathing. What are some of the other ways that you help to calm yourself during an anxiety attack?
I am one of those people that really needs a distraction because a lot of the time my anxiety attacks or any type of anxiety I'm experiencing, it just happens because I'm overthinking whatever situation I'm in. And I have this problem where I can't really get myself out of my own head. So if I can phone a friend, I can text a friend, or I have someone there with me that knows about my anxiety and they understand it, and they'll be really soothing and a good distraction for me to get me out of my own head and to help me stop focusing on the anxiety that I'm feeling. That's something that's really beneficial to me and helps me to cope with my anxiety a lot.
Okay.
And what do you think some common misconceptions are that people have when it comes to dealing with anxiety?
For me, especially since I do compete in pageants and I present myself a certain way, a lot of the times when I've told people that I have anxiety or I'm experiencing a panic attack or whatever it may be, they sort of have this idea that I'm just being dramatic. And when I was a child and I was dealing with anxiety, I heard all the time from teachers and from other adults around me that there was nothing wrong with me. I was just throwing a temper tantrum. So I think that a lot of people have a really dismissive idea about anxiety. They think that everybody has anxiety, everybody experiences anxiety, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And I think that's one of the really big misconceptions is that yes, everybody definitely experiences anxiety, but not everyone deals with an anxiety disorder. Not everyone lives with an anxiety disorder. And that's an important distinction that I have to make when I discuss my anxiety with people so that they can better understand and be a little bit more supportive of people who do live with anxiety.
Now, you mentioned that you had the benefit of having a mom who understood anxiety and mental illness. For parents who will be watching this video, what would you want to say to them?
I think for parents who have not dealt with anxiety or any type of mental illness in their lives, one of the hardest things to grasp is just how their child is actually feeling in that moment. And I would just urge them to be really supportive and understanding, even if it's something you don't really get, you've never dealt with it yourself. I mean, it's very difficult to understand if you've never gone through it, but you just have to really understand that your child is not making this up. This is something that they're truly experiencing and they need you right now. They need your help to get through this. So if you can support them just by being someone to listen to them, if you can support them by getting them into therapy or getting them medication if that's what they need, listen to your child and see what they need from you to get through the anxiety or whatever other mental illness they're experiencing, whatever feelings they're experiencing right now, and do that for them, be that person for them. Because when you're experiencing anxiety, it's really scary and you really need a strong support system to help you get through it.
Now, how about for somebody who lives with anxiety? What message do you have for them?
Of course, I've lived with anxiety for all of my life, and I didn't really know when I was younger that there were other people that are going through this too. And I think that's the most important thing you can recognize when you are living with anxiety is that you're not the only person who has to deal with this, and you're not in this alone. There are other people who experience similar symptoms. You know, they're going through a similar situation. They've gotten through it, and I promise you're going to be able to get through it too. You just have to find a really strong support system. You have to start to learn yourself and learn the ways that you can cope with anxiety.
Wow. Thank you, Faith. You gave us a lot of great information. I know that people viewing will, one, try to be as supportive as they can for their children, and they also know that they're not alone and that they may not be able to cope in the same way that you cope, but leading a life while living with anxiety is possible. And so thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you, and stay tuned for another episode of the Lunchtime Chat.
Yes, thank you again.
Thank you both so much for having me. I really enjoyed being able to chat with you both today.
Phenomenal, Faith. Thank you. And I'll reach out to you a little bit later.